back to the desert, everyone. This is a special request video. I've had several people ask me how I made the LED boards for the fiber optics for the consoles. So I thought I would share. I put up the little diagram on the right, what I'm going to be doing. I'm starting with the resistors. I'm using one resistor for each bank of 10 LEDs. The resistors I have 470 ohm and 430 ohm resistors. They both came with the flashing LEDs that I got from Amazon. I've been using the 430 ohm resistors. They seem to be work fine for what I need. I have doubled them up a couple times to make the light slightly dimmer, but especially for these flashing ones, I just one per bank of 10 seems to work fine. Maybe a little bit of OCD, but I really like to have things even. I'm not going to do anything with the resistors yet. I just wanted to hold them in place, so I just bent the wires. I want to get some LEDs in there. Occasionally I've had to move the resistor depending on the layout that I ended up changing halfway through. So for now I'll just put them in with the leads bent over. Make sure when you put your LEDs in, if you look at the diagram over on the right, the bottom one, they are directional. If you put them in the wrong way, they will not work. So what I do is for every group of 10, I have the short leads all on the inside. That way I can connect them together as well too. And because I know the pattern, I'm less likely to make a mistake. So pick a pattern that you like, pick away. If you want them short to the inside, short to the outside, short to the bottom, short to the top, whatever you do, just pick a pattern and stick with it. It's fewer chances of making mistakes. If you look at the diagram on the right, I'm going to try to mark what I'm working on. So right now I'm folding up the short leads for the first row of LEDs. I know that once they're soldered in place, they're not going to move and they become very rigid, but I like having them pushed down as far as possible onto the circuit board even before it begins soldering. Now I'm folding over the positive leads for that first row. There's a couple things you can do. I'll do both of them in this video. For the extra LED leads that are hanging over the edge there, you can cut them all off and just keep them as a bunch. Cut them off and just whatever's hanging over the board, and keep all the rest of them even, and just solder them all together. It works. It just makes a really fat wire. Or what you can do is trim each of them off right when they touch the next one, and then that way, if you line them up nicely, it makes a nice thin single wire. Like I said, I'll do both in this video. Either one works. It just depends on what you like. So on this first one, I'm gonna cut them off, so it just makes a nice clean line. When you're trimming them, though, if you do decide to trim them, make sure you don't cut the wrong one. You could fix it. I mean, you could, put another wire in there, splice a wire in between. But it just kind of defeats the purpose of using the legs of the LEDs as connectors if you cut them off. I'm kind of bending that last lead out of the way. I need it to reach up to the resistor, or the resistor, there we go. I'm just wrapping the resistor's lead around that one leg of the LED. Always use rosin when you're soldering. Without it, a lot of times the solder connection is bad. Electricity won't flow through, your circuit won't work. Use it, it works. It cleans the part, makes the solder flow nicely. It really helps. Next, I'm going to do that very first bunch of positive leads. These are the long ones on the outside, the far left in the diagram where the arrow's pointing. These I'm not going to cut off. I'm going to cut off the part that hangs over the board, as you'll see I'm doing right now. But the rest I'm just going to leave all together, so you can see what that looks like. And just make sure they're not touching each other, because you don't want the positive lead and the negative lead to touch each other, because then of course it won't work. So I put a little bit of solder at the end just to hold them all down. Now I can go through and make sure that they're all connected, all touching, and that everything's going to work nicely. You can see how much fatter that first one is than the second one, because one's basically 5 leads wide and one's only 1 lead wide. Again, next time you're putting the next row of LEDs in, make sure that your leads are the way that you want them. As you can see for me, I'm putting the short leads on the inside towards the other row of LEDs. Here I'm just folding them over. Again, all the insides are short, they're all negative, so I'm connecting them together in each group of 10 LEDs. I'm doing a little ladder pattern. So the long lead folds down, and then the short lead goes across to meet up with the short lead from the first row of LEDs. Once you have your pattern down, and then you know which way you want to bend the LED leads, it's nice because again it holds them in place. There's no risk of them falling out, so it makes life a lot easier. And here I folded over the negative leads from the second row of LEDs over to the first one. Now I'm just trimming off the ends, make it look like a little ladder. I want to do the whole row, so that's why I just went ahead and put rosin on the whole thing. This is the next set of positive leads. I'm gonna go ahead and cut these off. I don't really like the fat wire so much. It is simple because there's no cutting involved, or not a lot of cutting involved. But I do think it looks neater with them trimmed. Yeah, be careful with those. They go everywhere, and they're very sharp. I've walked around the room. There's carpet in the room where I'm working, and dropped some on the floor, and the next day, sure enough, walked in and had 2 of them sticking in my foot. So be careful. So the negative leads are connected already by the little ladder that I made, but I do need to have both sets of positive leads connected, so that's what I'm doing right now. Like a little jumper. You can make them longer. There's no need to make them as short as I'm making them. If it's easier to hang on to, if it's easier, to manipulate, if it's longer, that's totally fine. I just like having them short. Sometimes it gets tricky if you're doing multiple wires into the same spot, because when you attach the second wire to the third wire, the solder can melt. You'll see that later on, actually, when I attach, I think, a third wire to that same point. I end up having to solder it twice because it does come loose again. Not really a big deal, just be aware of it so that you can prepare for it and plan for it. Time to add the connector. So because now I have a bank of LEDs, I want to make sure I test, because I don't want to build the whole board and get to the end and realize it doesn't work. Now I'm connecting the resistor to the power plug. You might notice that I actually have the positive lead come directly from the power to the LEDs, and I have the resistor in line with the negative lead. It doesn't matter whether the resistor is in front of the LED or behind the LED if you want to think of it as going in a direction. The only thing that's important, again, is the direction of the LEDs. So you could, if you wanted to, you could put the resistor on the red lead between the power plug and the first LED on the red side. That's fine too. The way I have it lined up, it's just the way it worked. The plug fits nicely that way, which puts the positive red lead on the left, and so that's how the rest of the board evolved. But either way works. It doesn't matter. Again, if you want to change it, just make sure you test. Always test. So the negative's connected with the resistor. There's a jumper between the two positive leads from the LEDs, and now I need to connect the positive side. Now in the diagram on the right, you'll notice that I have it going from the plug, just a very short red lead to the first LED. I'm actually going to wire it slightly differently. I'm going to have it go from the plug all the way down to the bottom, where the other red lead is connected. It doesn't matter. It works exactly the same. It's a single wire. So whether you want to connect to the top or the bottom, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's the right side, of course. It works. And these are just standard flashing LEDs. I got them off Amazon. I got red, blue, and white. And they're supposed to flash at the same rate, but of course everything is slightly off. So let them run long enough, and you get a nice random flashing pattern. Going for the second bank, so the third row. Again, make sure that you have your pattern down. Make sure you know where the long legs are and where the short legs are. I'm going to fold the positive leads down first. When I say up and down too, for me, up is the side of the board where like in the diagram, the power connector is up, and the bottom side is of course down. So where the positive jumper leads are, to me that's down. Kind of like north and south on a map. It's not really up or down. It just feels like it's up or down. Now I'm folding the negative leads up. These are going to be connected to the second resistor. That's why I'm folding them up. That very thin lead sticking up above my thumb, that's the other end of the resistor lead. That's going to go to the power plug. That's the end that we're going to wrap around the negative leads. The other one's still sticking up. We'll attach that one later. For now, I just want to, put enough solder and rosin on there to hold it down, keep everything in place. Because I have the 5 leads from the LED, plus the 1 lead from the resistor coming in there. So once it's held down, now I can just cut this one. These are just, I'm just cutting them off right at the edge of the board. I'm not trimming them individually. It was sticking up a little bit, so I used the pliers to kind of bend the end down a little bit. Just be careful though. The boards do break, don't squish them too hard. So now that they're trimmed and the ends are held down, I can spend some time and go over the rest of them, make sure they're all nice and really well connected. Best advice I can give, just take your time. Remember, it's called a circuit. It's a circle. Electricity has to flow in a circle. So just make sure that you can trace the line where the electricity is supposed to go, as long as it goes, in red and then on the positive leads of the LEDs. And then for me, out the LED through the resistor and back to the power plug. It'll work. As you can see here, this one, I'm cutting the leads right, the previous lead right when it gets to the next lead, so that when they're cut, I can easily solder them together. But again, just make sure that they do overlap a little bit. It's not impossible to do it if there's a small gap, but it just reduces your chances of an error if there's a slight overlap, so they can touch. You see me cleaning up the station as often. I probably should do it more often. Be careful, because the rosin is sticky, and those little extra leads can sometimes end up sticking to the board. And then you try to do a test, and next thing you know, nothing works, even though it was working before. I found a couple times that a little wire was stuck somewhere. It's barely visible because it's all the same color, so it looks like it was just another lead that was already in there. But it turns out we're shorting out the entire circuit. So that first row of LEDs, we've got both legs attached now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and connect that second resistor back to the negative side of the power plug, as you can see in the diagram. Kind of like when you're putting a wire around a screw, if you've ever done any electrical work in your house, for example. I like to try to bend the end of the wire a little bit if I can. If there is, for example, for the power plug, there's a little lead sticking up, so I just bent the black wire just a tiny bit to kind of have it wrap around. Makes for a better connection with the solder. Just make sure you don't solder the negative black lead to the positive red lead. It wouldn't make for a good lighting board. Now I need to make the next jumper so I can connect the first bank of 10 LEDs to the second bank. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is the third lead that I'm attaching to the same spot. And everything works. Again, I'll say it again. Pay attention to the direction. You'll be disappointed if you don't. You'll get to the end. I think everything's going to work. You plug it in, and 9 out of 10 lights work. It's because one of them is backwards. First, I'm just bending the positive leads down, as you can see by the arrow on the right in the diagram. I'm just moving, folding the negative lead over to make the ladder like the first bank of LEDs. I like to use the end of the tweezers to push down hard. Again, I like to make sure everything's nice and tight. Just connecting the negative lead from the second row of red LEDs to the negative lead of the first row of red LEDs. Just trimming off the ends. if you watched my episode 8 video, you'll see that I made quite a few lighting boards with 4 banks on them. It's exact same as this. This is just 2. 4, just squish everything up, put in more resistors. So again, I still use 1 resistor for every 10 LEDs, so those had 40 LEDs on them. So there were 4 resistors. But the wiring is exactly the same. You can see what I mean by the having the leads touch. I just want them to barely touch, just so that there is nice contact between them. And also it looks neat. I'm just connecting all the positive leads for that last row LEDs. Always keep your workspace clean. At least try. Now I need to make the last jumper. I was actually going to connect it to the same place where the other 3 leads were going, but A, there were already 3 leads there, and B, the wire was actually a little bit short. So again, it doesn't really matter. Any one of those spots, they're all connected. As long as there's no LED in between or resistor in between, the voltage and the current will be the same. And it works. Nice job. It's hard to see with everything being the same color, but it does look like the diagram. And just take your time, go slow. Make sure you have a circle. Think of it flowing. It has to go around. The nice thing is too, it's only 3 volts or 5 volts, so you're not going to shock yourself. I hope you enjoyed. It was fun making this. If you have any other questions or anything else you'd like to see, let me know. I'd be more than happy to do what I can. Thanks again.